Welcome to SalonEra, a salon experience for the 21st century that brings together artists and audiences for music and conversation. Produced remotely, SalonEra is not subject to geographic or programming limitations, and that means that every episode is full of different artists, different music, and spontaneous conversation. We'd love to see and feel your encouragement or applause, so feel free to engage in the chat at any time. We also look forward to responding to your thoughts and comments when we go live for the Q&A following this broadcast. We'd also like you to have the best possible experience watching SalonEra, so we recommend that you check your settings on YouTube or on Facebook to ensure that you're watching in the highest quality. Feel free to visit our website for more ideas on optimizing your settings. We are creating new opportunities for artists to collaborate, and we're bringing our work and our passions into your home. While SalonEra is free to watch, I urge you to consider making a donation. Your support compensates our participating artists whose livelihoods have been so deeply affected by the COVID-19 pandemic. Thanks for watching and enjoy the show. Music was created and performed abundantly in Latin America from before, during, and after the arrival of the conquistadors in the late 15th century. While the colonizers brought both violence and devastating disease, they also introduced European musical culture, largely through the work of missionaries who used music in the service of conversion and assimilation. It wasn't a simple transplantation of European music to the colonies, however. Rather, tonight's episode bears witness to the evolution of a rich, mixed musical tradition that was not only infused with, but also shaped by, the music of indigenous peoples and African slaves who were transported there. Our guests tonight are each specialists and passionate advocates for early music from Latin America, yet each takes a different view and approach. We'll talk with American Uruguayan soprano Nell Snaidas and Bolivian violinist Karin Cuellar Rendon about their explorations in Latin American music that have been preserved in cathedral archives and sometimes even held fast by indigenous populations for centuries. We'll talk about, look at, and even hear music from Peru's astoundingly beautiful Codex Martinez Compagnon, known as the Trujillo Codex. And Karin will illuminate more recent discoveries in early 19th century music by native composer Pedro Jimenez Abril Tirado. Venezuelan viola da gamba player Laury Gutierrez has been using a Latin Baroque fusion approach with her ensemble Rumba Rocco, which explores the intersection of early European music with unspoken African traditions and current Latin American sounds. As we'll see and hear, Rumba Rocco transcends all limitations with an ensemble of musicians performing on period, folk, and contemporary popular instruments. Nell Snaidas joins us tonight from New York City. Karin Cuellar Rendon is in Montreal, Quebec, and Laury Gutierrez joins us from her home outside Boston. Good evening, Nell. It's great to see you tonight.
Hi, Deb. Thank you so much for having us and for this beautiful SalonEra program that you've put together.
Thank you. Well, it's my pleasure. And honestly, I've been an admirer of your work for so very long. And
thank you.
You do so many different things. You curate programs for Gotham Early Music Society and the Americas Society in the JMAS series. I've seen you as a kind of guest director and curator with so many different ensembles. And you've also had your own projects, so some of which we'll hear excerpts from tonight, like with the Bishop's Band and touring throughout South America. So it's great to have you here. We have a whole lot of different music that you're sharing with us. And I thought we might actually just jump right in and talk a little bit about the first song that you're sharing with us this evening. I wonder if you can introduce that.
Yes, thank you, Deb. This video clip is from a live concert in Quito at the Sacred Music Festival of Quito, and it was a collaborative project between a group called Meridionalis, which is led by Sebastián Subieta, who's my co-artistic director of GEMAS. He has a fantastic choral group dedicated to Latin American new and old music. And then we collaborated with the group Lipsodes, which is from Bloomington, I think led by Juan Carlos Arango. And it's a wind band. So we came together and performed music from this codex that is now in situ in Ibarra, Ecuador. And I believe that it's thought that the manuscript actually does come from Quito, from a nunnery, but the codex includes full range choral works, but also little fragments of pieces. And this is a little fragment that was shared with me. It's called Una tonadilla nueva, which means a new song. And it's just a melody. And the melody talks, the text speaks about how this is a new song. It's short, it's nice and sweet. And the singer wants to bring it to Bethlehem. And inserted is that this is the song, and then there's this little refrain which is in solfege suddenly. Oh. So she says, I want to bring this little song, and then she sings a little snippet of the solfege of this piece. By the way, the solfege in the original little manuscript doesn't actually, it's not the right solfege. It's a different solfege. It doesn't correspond to the notes. Okay. So I took a little artistic liberty and changed it to the right solfege because I'm playing the guitar and singing and solfeging, and it was, I thought, well, I'm just going to do the right solfege to it. But anyway, I wonder if it was referencing a different tune with a different solfege. But anyway.
That's interesting. Yeah. Well, and whenever there's solfege in pieces, you know, I always think that, like, I want to think like, oh, does this have some kind of pedagogical value? Was it like to teach people the melody? But then it's sort of hilarious if actually the syllables don't correspond to.
They don't at all. Yeah. I mean,
there was a little something lost in translation, maybe.
Exactly. Exactly. But basically the song talks about going and bringing this little simple song to the Christ child who's lying in straw. But as the child is lying in straw, she wants to wake him up and tell him that she wants to be taught the difference between right and wrong. And just to let the her darling know that the thing she wants most out of life is to just sit at the feet of the Christ child and adore his eyes. So playing on this is a fantastic guitar player, John Wasserman, who was in the Lipsodes group at the time. Okay. And we took that melody, and there's a very simple chord progression, and we just, I said, here, obviously, these are the chords, and we sat together and played through it and made up our own little part, and it seemed to feel very natural.
Wow, fantastic. Well, let us listen to Una tonadilla nueva.
Duerme
I know that is so lovely, just heart
Sweet
melting.
piece, isn't it? Just simple and to the point.
So, the idea of not only of you accompanying yourself on the guitar, but also being accompanied by a guitarist sort of brings us to our next piece. And I wanted to bring up, actually, you've worked for a really long time with Richard Savino and his group El Mundo, and made multiple discs with them. And I understand that you have just recorded a new project of music from Guatemala.
Yes.
With Rich, that I was hoping that you could talk to us about.
Yeah, it's as we all know, it's such a great pleasure to work with your friends. We have been recording together El Mundo for many years, and every couple of summers, Rich will pull together a project, and we all meet in California and record up at Skywalker Sound, and it's always a fantastic experience. So on this latest CD, which is called Archivo de Guatemala, or Guatemalan Archive, it's a CD compiled of things that were found in the archive. And on the CD, I just want to make sure I don't forget anybody. It's Richard Savino, who has not only curated the CD, but has made his own editions of things that he found in the archive. And the violinists Adam Lamott and Lisa Gordon, Paul Schipper singing and playing guitar and all kinds of percussion, Cheryl Ann Fulton on the harp, and John Schneiderman, a fantastic guitar player, lutenist, Jenny Ellis Campani, and Ryland Angel. And you need a big band to try to, represent what is there. It's just a humongous archive with solos and duets and very serious pieces, and also more popular sounding pieces, a lot of jacaras. They're liturgical in nature. And then pieces of Spanish composers that are found there, like Sebastián Durón, who's a very famous Spanish composer, and José de Torres. A lot of music from him, which is just a phenomenal composer. So much of the work that we recorded will be recorded for the first time. And then there are some pieces that have also been recorded before.
That's exciting. It's one thing that is, I think, really wonderful about this episode in particular is the opportunity to, really hear about an enormous quantity of music that is still yet to be recorded, and in some cases even only newly discovered. So it's really wonderful to hear how rich and also broad the repertoire can be.
Yes, there's so much scholarship going on right now, and as we all become more connected via social media, we get to learn about things from the archive, musical pieces from the archive. There's a fantastic musicologist I'd like to mention named Omar Morales Abril, and he's in Guatemala, and he has access to the archives, and he will post on Instagram these fantastic little little photographs of pieces from the archive, and with little just fascinating things that are written in the margins. And one in particular, there was a piece that says to the bajon player, the dulcian player, please don't play when the soprano's singing, because your sound, the bass quality of your sound is absolutely is turning off their sound. It shuts down their sound. So these little gems that you find just written in there that
you give a hand to the bassoon player. Well, you mentioned big bands, and we're going to hear a big band piece in a moment, or in a little bit. But first, actually, I wanted to hear something really intimate, and that is a song with you and Rich, Ojos pues me deseñáis. Can you introduce that for us?
Sure. This is my favorite Jose Marin song, who's a Spanish Baroque composer who was a tenor and himself a accomplished Baroque guitar player, among many other things. And he has this volume of tonos humanos, or just secular songs, that are, just rival Schubert. They're fantastic. And this piece speaks about, in this very Baroque thing, to speak about the eyes. So you say the eyes of the beloved are shunning me and looking at me with disdain, and I can't stand to see this look. And the refrain is el ver, the look, that look. And you can imagine each time, it's great opportunity for Baroque singers to interpret each look, feel each different possible look that the lover could give you that lets you know that they're not happy with you. So it's a song about, just saying, please don't be cruel. Please, I'm looking at these eyes that are breaking my heart.
Nell, that was such a beautiful and intimate performance. Thank you so much for that.
Thank you.
And I'm very pleased to welcome Karin Cuellar Rendon. How are you tonight?
Hey, Debra, and hey, Nell. So glad to be here. I'm very excited for this show.
Thank you. Well, I know you have so much to bring to our conversation and to contribute musically, so I'm very excited. In the introduction that I had a few minutes ago, I previewed a few images from the Trujillo Codex, and I would love to talk a little bit more about it, not only because the images are beautiful, but because there's also 19 pieces of music in the manuscript, actually 2 of which we'll hear in a moment. And Nell, I was hoping that you could talk to us a little bit about the Trujillo Codex and what it is and how it came about.
Sure, of course. This remarkable codex is just a treasure for us. The Martínez Compagnon Codex, or the Codex Trujillo, was begun as a census. When the Bishop Martínez Compagnon was sent from Spain, he was tasked with the charge of making a census to send back to King Charles III. And so what he did was he traveled with a retinue of watercolor artists and musicians and botanists who went around and recorded everything that they saw throughout the archdiocese. So, for example, you can see these watercolors show people cooking and the different pots and objects that they used to cook with and what they wore. But for us as musicians, what's so exciting is that they had someone come and take down dictation what they heard in different musical performances that they heard. There they are dancing in their finery, and you have, as we spoke about, the 3 of us before we started to tape this, you see the harp is on this poor man's shoulder upside down. Mm-hmm. And he's playing with the lutenist, and there they are dancing in some kind of a round. And this next image, which Karin noticed that you can see on their ankles, they have these little bells, almost like, Morris dancing bells. Mm. And so that they're not only playing for dancers and keeping the rhythm and playing the guitar in these little masks. And yes, Karin also noted that there's a cow jaw that they're playing, like a guiro, like some kind of percussive instrument.
And do you have an idea of what the person on the right-hand side might be doing?
I remember when we were putting together the show of blessed memory, Tom Zajac, that we had a box like that, and inside it was some kind of a percussive instrument.
The next piece, actually, that we were going to play tonight is from a project that you created with Tom, and it is of music from the Trujillo Codex. And can you talk to us about what the song is and describe the performance for us?
Sure. This was a performance that we did at the Hispanic Society in New York City, which is a beautiful museum up in Harlem. And it's with a group called the Bishop's Band that Tom and I started together in honor of this Bishop Martínez Compagnon. This piece is called Denos la esencia, señores. And the text is very short. It just says, give us permission, sirs, since it's Christmas Eve, to dance and sing, as this is the custom of our land. And then there's a little refrain, which is ki ya ya. And when we first started working on it, we thought, oh, ki ya ya, la di da, that it was just kind of onomatopoeic. But on further study, there's also a part of the codex is a dictionary with all different languages and different terms, translations. And they say that the word ki ya ya is from the Kayi language, which is extinct now. I believe it was extinct in the 50s. And there's some incidental information that there is still a dance in Peru that is called the ki ya ya. Wow. So perhaps they're saying, let us sing and that there might be, it's okay. This is a religious dance. It's Christmas Eve, that kind of thing where it's our custom. May we dance?
Mm. Wow. Let's listen to that, and then I'd love to look at a few more pictures and talk about the instrumental music as well.
Jason McStute sings the lead beautifully on this.
Yes. That looks like it was such a fun project, and I saw on the side of the screen that you were able to have a visual element as well.
Yes, we projected the accompanying watercolors with the pieces that we were singing, and Tom Zajac put that all together.
I would love to look at just a couple more images. For instance, this, instead of a harp being up on the shoulder, here we have a standing harp player with a violinist, and I love actually the detail of these bows, for instance.
Yeah, and to think that this collection was compiled at the end of the 18th century. We are talking about 1782 through 85, or 1790s, and they are still using Baroque bows.
Absolutely. This is a really fascinating slide, which Nell brought to my attention. Not only do we have this harpist, but the person kneeling appears to be playing essentially percussion on the harp.
Fantastic to see that the singer actively singing is also making palmas and keeping the rhythm, and with the guitar player. And I believe this is part of an image where if you were to pull out that there are people dancing, so you can see that this is a great two-person band. And I think that it's was part of a singer's skill set to be able to keep rhythm for themselves like that, and maximizing the sound that you can make, all the different sounds you can make with your hands.
Right. So in addition to songs, there's also some instrumental music in the Trujillo Codex, including this piece, Karin, which I hope that you could talk to us about specifically, and maybe also generally about instrumental music in Trujillo.
Yeah, so in this codex, we find traditional Peruvian dances such as cachuas, tonadas, and lanchas. Among these, there are only 3 that are purely instrumental pieces.
Okay.
Those are the baile del chimo, baile de danzantes con pífano y tamboril, and lanchas para bailar, which is this sheet that you have in the screen. Baile del chimo y baile de danzantes con pífano y tamboril make reference to the chimo culture, who up to this day play this pre-Columbus dance tune in the town of Incahuasi. If you go to YouTube, you will be able to find recent versions of this tune that, of course, has been passed to our times through oral transmission. Lanchas para Bailar, though, is this piece, this instrumental piece, with remarkable rhythmic and melodic complexity, but it has no specification as of the origin. What I find so interesting about this piece is that it is evident that the transcriber, presumably being the maestro de capilla of Spanish origin, heard this piece and wrote it in 3/4, as a way to organize it within European formal conventions. And there's a lot of traditional music that plays between 3/4 and 6/8, and especially those of African influence. And I think Lanchas para Bailar is one of those.
I have to tell you, it's been in my head, playing on repeat for the last week or more since we recorded it, which we'll hear in a moment. But I wanted to just also mention one other thing about the score, which is it's just a treble line, or it's his violin and a bass part. But I understand, we've been talking about these big expanded bands and textures, and I wonder if you could speak about that.
Yeah. So then, Nell, did you want to say something about it?
No, I'm enjoying listening to you, except that this piece is so much harder than it looks on the page.
That is true. So in much of the traditional music from the Andean countries, we find voices always singing in parallel thirds and sixths. So in the performance of this music, we practice, the texture is added by the use of layers of doubling instruments and full accompaniment sections composed of percussion, bass instruments, guitar, charango, harp. So because this is traditional music. The music in the Martinez Companion Codex is traditional music played with the European instruments, which of course reflects the process of syncretism that took place during the colonial times, right? In which various traditions merged. But when we approach these pieces in the performance, that's what we try to not recreate, but to get inspiration from current traditions of performance of traditional music. And that is what we did with this piece. I added another voice, which it would be normal or natural to hear in much of traditional music from the Andean areas, that sings in parallel thirds and sixths, and we try to add more accompaniment instruments like the guitar. We have the harpsichord and we have the cello.
Cool. So we have a band that we've created to play these lanchas, and let's listen to that now. I hope you enjoyed the remote collaboration that we just heard, which was created especially for you, our audience at home, and for this episode. While recording remotely presents some unique challenges, we're so happy to be able to bring artists together for new collaborations and to share their fascinating and beautiful work. In this way, SalonEra supports working artists who have all been deeply affected by the COVID-19 pandemic. We'll return to the show in a moment, but in the meantime, please consider supporting these artists and SalonEra with a donation. Karin, it was so fun to work on that lanchas with you. Thank you so much for the beautiful arrangement.
Likewise, Debra. It was super fun to see the result.
Yeah, it's amazing these days. We did one other collaboration together, and when we spoke about planning this episode and the music that could happen, you shared all kinds of trio sonatas with me, which were honestly very kind of classical or gallant in nature, and and clearly sort of imported music. And I wondered if you could talk about the piece that we're about to hear and how it came, who wrote it, and how it came to arrive in the New World.
So there are many different sources that we can find in the archives in Latin America, right? We know that the Jesuit missionaries used music to approach the indigenous, especially since they didn't speak the language. Right. So music was used as a tool for indoctrination and quote-unquote evangelization. So, some types of these sources are like music that was brought from Europe by settlers, music brought by traveling musicians. And there was also music composed by composers that traveled from Europe to America to become chapel masters. There were also European settlers that founded music schools for their descents. And then we have criollos and indigenous people having access to music education. We have someone like Cipoli, for example, who composed in America, but he was born in Italy. And we have a lot of his music in the archives in Bolivia. Then we also have cathedral music only composed for within the cathedrals, in the capitals of, or in the big cities in America during the colonial times. Only in Bolivia, for example, in the cathedral archives, we find around, 2,000 big format pieces. And I'm talking about like 4 choir pieces, like those of Roque Ceruti. There is also music that was brought for the nuns' consumption at their convents. And it was also composed there. We have accounts of people saying that there were entire operas being presented at the convents, so then they had a rich musical tradition. And there was music specifically brought for the missions. In South America, during the first evangelization period, at the beginning of the 17th century and late 16th, there was music in what is now Argentina, Paraguay, Brazil, and Chile. But this music is all lost. The Chiquitos archive, which the piece that we are going to listen next recites on, survived the time, and it's specifically the Wars of Independence that it survived. The archives, the missions in Argentina, Paraguay, Brazil, and Chile were very close to the city centers. And once the Wars of Independence reached these little towns, the churches were burned and the instruments also were burned. But the archives in Bolivia were in the middle of the jungle, so then they survived all this time. And that is why now we have the biggest archive of Baroque music with around 5,000 pages of music, only in one of the cities. In another little town, we have another 1,500. And I'm talking about, concerti, sinfonias, sonatas, operas, cantatas, vespers, etc. Another type of source is Afro-American music, or music of African influence. And what we had with the Martinez Compagnon, which is autochthonous music transmitted orally, and in the case of Compagnon, transcribed. So the music that we're going to listen next was found in the Chiquitos archive. And the Chiquitos and Mojos archives are the ones that contain music composed in Europe, as well as music composed at their missions. And so these excerpts that we're going to hear were taken from the Sonatas Chiquitanas, which is a collection of sonatas that were found in the Chiquitos archive, written in trio sonata format. And some of them bear the name of the composer in the title page, like, for example, the Sonata 10, which is composed by Bilby. But that's more the exception than the rule. So most of the music that we find in these archives is anonymous. But we are lucky that we will be able to play a piece by a composer that we know lived in Italy.
Right. Well, that's a fantastic introduction to the range of sources, both European and indigenous, that we find and can draw on. And this is, as you said, Karin, two movements, quite short, Andante and Allegro by Ignazio Balbi. Fun. That is brilliant and sweet and very very fun. And the style is really classical, actually. And you are so incredibly knowledgeable about all this Latin American music, but I know that you're actually deeply into research, and in particularly research on early 19th century sources in Bolivia.
Yeah, that's true. I'm actually researching music that was produced during the Age of Revolutions, roughly between 1790s and 1850s. And this is a period during which the Spanish colonial rule ended, giving way to the Republican era. What is very interesting about this period and what draws me to it is that during this time, the fight for freedom, liberty, independence, and ultimately democracy permeated every aspect of life, including arts and music, and therefore influencing composers of the time. At the center of my work is Peruvian composer Pedro Jiménez Aruel Tirado. He born in 1784 and died in 1856. And his output serves as a case study to demonstrate the ways in which South American composers were able to shape their aesthetic identities during the Enlightenment movements, colonial reforms, and independence revolutions. His oeuvre is impressive for its quality, its size, and aesthetic breadth. And I consider him, and many other scholars that are also looking into 19th century music, as the most prolific South American composer of his time. And as a result, I do acknowledge that his work constitutes a crucial source in the history of classical and romantic musical performance practices. And that is actually what I'm researching. performance practices during the first half of the 19th century. We didn't have access to his music until maybe around a decade ago, you know. Mm-hmm. But he was very famous during his time. He held the post of Maestro de Capilla in the cathedral in Sucre, Bolivia. And this post was previously occupied by renowned composers such as Juan de Araujo, and we heard a piece by him, Blas Tario de Guzmán, and Roque Jacinto Chavarria. And this collection that I'm talking about is so important. Currently, it's housed at the Archivo y Bibliotecas Nacionales de Bolivia, but it contains around 120 large format compositions, including masses, passions, symphonies. He has 40 symphonies. I don't know yet how to make the connection with Mozart, but
right.
40 symphonies. And another
short.
Exactly. In this collection, we also found music by European composers, including Cambini, Pleyel, Haydn, Beethoven, Boccherini. And so then this collection is so important because not only enlighten us about the musical tastes of the time and his influences on musical practice in the capital of Bolivia, but also, show us about broader issues concerning the practice of musical consumption of the time. And finally, attest to the richness of musical culture in South America during the first half of the 19th century.
I know that you have for us a movement of a string quartet by Tirado. You talked about the kind of cultural identity, particular cultural identity in the post-colonial period. And is that infiltrate this movement that we're going to hear?
Definitely. Okay. The excerpt that we are going to listen is from the Cuarteto para dos violines, viola y violoncello, opus 55, that it was composed around the first decades of the 19th century. In this second movement, called or named Adagio con sordina, we will hear, hopefully, the Andean sound. He used the form of the yaraví to compose this second movement. Usually in a second movement of a string quartet, you will expect a through composed form, right? But he uses a yaraví, which is a song genre, a Peruvian song genre associated with the independence cause during the Age of Revolutions. So this movement explores a variety of timbres and colors while putting two very contrasting themes in conversation. Something that is very specific to the yaraví, for example, is that it's accompanied by the guitar, and we will be able to hear violins and violas sing the melodies while accompanied by arpeggiated figures that resemble the common guitar accompaniment of this genre by the cello. This genre, the yaraví, was very important during the independence, the time of independence wars, because it was born as a poetic form. The yaraví was only a poem, but then it became a song genre that it was used in salon gatherings, to open these conversations about the independence and the revolutions.
I have heard this excerpt and it is so atmospheric, and it's wonderful to have this context and understand the different timbres and associations that a listener would have had. Let's listen to this Adagio con sordina by Tirado. Good evening, Laury. How are you?
I am doing very well. Thank you. Thank you for inviting me to this outstanding program, hearing your guests. It's been just a delight.
Oh, it's my pleasure. I've long admired your work. You're a passionate advocate for music by women composers with your group La Donna Musicale, and a more recent project is Rumba Rocco, which focuses on Latin music. And the work is so distinctive and so high energy. And I wondered what inspired you to start Rumba Rocco.
As early music musicians, as historical performers, we study for a long time manuscripts and treatises and all of that. And the word authentic is very important for a historical performer. But for a long time, I was wondering what it is to be authentic when you're doing this repertory of both from Spain and Latin America. What does it mean to be authentic? And how then and now could a South American musician play this repertory? At that time, and for a long time, I thought about this and had this desire eating me up. And one day I realized that I had the perfect ensemble here in Boston. Um, Camila Parias, a singer from Colombia, who, if you haven't done anything with her, you must. She has an incredible voice. Was here. at Longi, and she just had graduated, and asked me, can she play with us? And of course, she was more than welcome. At that time, we had also this Venezuelan guitarist, Salome Sandoval. And as you know, again, this is an extraordinary musician that I just wish to see her everywhere else, because she is extremely talented. She plays the lute and the early classic guitars, but she also sings. And I had these two huge elements in for my ensemble, and I had, of course, the Berkeley School of Music with all these Latin American students around, and I was thinking, wow, this is it. I have all I need, I thought. And we started to prepare for the rehearsals and arrangement, and but the important thing was how I, as a South American, can be authentic to South American music. And the way to do it was, they gave me the path to rumba rocco.
Wow.
That's the first part. The second part is I don't know, as you we always as a musician, you always are doing soul search. What am I doing? Why am I doing this? And who I am? And you have all these philosophical questions. And one day I decided to do 23andMe, because I said, why am I doing European music? I again, with the idea of being authentic. Am I being authentic to myself? So I did this. I don't know if you know about it. It's a DNA test called
Yeah,
23andMe.
yeah, I know about it.
And
Yeah.
I got my results, and some of it was interesting. And I saw that I had over about 60% European, um, a certain percentage, 10% indigenous, and 20% black. I was disappointed. I wanted to have more of the black, and and I realized, well, that's what it happens. That
Yeah.
I, like Salome and many other musicians in South America, we are a mix of cultures, a mix of races. We're not just black or just indigenous or just
Right.
European. We are a combination, and that's why I said, well, I can do these women composers from Europe because I have the connection. But at this moment of my life, I think it's important to acknowledge that there is a whole set of feelings, rhythms, techniques. It's interesting what you. I was listening to what you were interviewing Karin earlier. You found it interesting that the person was playing percussion in the harp, but if you go to South America, go to Venezuela right now, you will be amazed to see all these things that you were talking about right now. People will use, they're so creative, that I think that's the important thing about authentic with this music, and that people are extremely creative. That musicians just come up with things, and that's not written in the treatises. You're not going to find that in the music, and so you to play this music, you have to get out of the paper and see what is being produced right now in the world folk music. In the little town, you will see somebody making palms, making music, percussion, making other instrument be percussive like the harp. So as you can see, all of this is living with us. The
Right.
early music lives with us in South America. We still have this chord progression. We have techniques that we're using. And to be authentic, I thought, well, I need to incorporate all of this.
I think that's fabulous. Could you introduce for us the next piece that we're going to hear?
Yes. Again, the fusion of cultures is not happening today or yesterday. It started a long time ago. And uh, in Spain specifically, we have, and in Portugal, we have these composers that are enriched by all this cultural movement that is happening. So when we talk about when we talk about Negro or Guineo pieces, um, it's again, it's a fascinating thing because you have the fusion of two cultures right there. You have the European, because the piece is 4 parts, and you have polyphony, which is we identify as a trait of European music. But then you have other things, one that are readily accessible, like the language. The language used is what I will call Afro-Castilian. You have African descendants in Venezuela, in South America. They connect to the language of Castilian, and they make their own. And this is the language that Gaspar Fernandez and many others are using. And it's important to know that these are not just the musicians using. So in this piece, you get the traditional two dialogue, two singers interacting, and you get the polyphony section. But the unspoken part that I wanted to mention is the drums, the percussion. And I get horrified when people are playing these villancicos and they are not considering that the composer had some kind of rhythm in there, that he didn't write percussion, but you can see in 17th century music, 18th century music, you don't find percussion parts. It's not written. And it doesn't mean that it wasn't played. There is another take. People don't, because these pieces were composed to be used in the church, that maybe the percussion instruments were in there. I don't subscribe for that, but I respect if the people wanted to interpret it like that. But for me, I have 3 percussion people playing in this piece, and that's too little.
Well, it's a really fantastic and high energy performance. Let's listen to it. Laury, that is so much fun and really fantastic. And we have just one more piece this evening, and then I look forward to coming back for the Q&A, which I'm sure will be a ton of fun to talk about. And the last piece is a fandango by Soler, who is a classical era composer working in Spain. He's best known for his keyboard pieces, which have the influence of Scarlatti. I know that you actually have a program on the fandango coming up at the end of your season. But this performance, which is an excerpt, in fact, because I can't imagine the entirety of it, but it's really transformed by your ensemble. And I was wondering if you could talk a little bit about the approach and introduce what we'll hear.
Certainly, this is one of my favorite pieces and topics, because we start really to, when we start talking about the fandango, you have to go to back to Arabic music and how that goes to Spain and influence the Spanish people, and they come up with something called fandango, and the fandango spreads out into the world, and in Spain becomes flamenco, in Mexico it becomes jarabe zapateado, in Peru festejo, and in Venezuela it becomes joropo. And there are different type of joropos, but what happens is that you have what we tend to forget, and it happened in the 19th century, and especially with this concept that traditional music is basically invented. It's not traditional music, it's folkloric music. That's what the folk music people are doing, and this is oral tradition. So these oral traditions are becoming part of the repertory, and they become genres. So when we took this fandango piece, we took as a source Soler's piece, and we didn't take all his variations. What we did is, okay, we're presenting, if you hear it's actually recorded, this piece. If you hear the beginning, you have an introduction where I present the three chord, 1-4-5, and 1-4-5-1, 1-4-5-1. And then you present the castanets, and then we present the rhythms of Venezuelan music that we play, which is pasaje and joropo. And we play the piece arranged for violin, viola da gamba, bass, and Baroque guitar. And this chord progression in the middle of it, right well with this excerpt, because it's too long to present in this program. So in this particular place, we're playing the music of Soler, and all of a sudden, because it's 1-4-5, we pass it to the harp, and the harp improvises and introduces us to the joropo, and the harpist then passes that to each of the other musicians, and they improvise. And so I think that
it's incredibly exciting. I look forward to talking more with each of you in the Q&A in a few minutes. But in the meantime, let's listen to Rumba Rocco performing this excerpt of their arrangement and improvisation on Soler's Fandango. Thanks so much for tuning in to SalonEra. Still to come is a live Q&A with Karin, Laury, Nell, and myself. We'll start broadcasting the live Q&A moments after this video ends, so stay put. If you are watching on salonera.org, press refresh on your browser and the Q&A will appear. And if you're watching on Facebook or YouTube, be sure to like our page and subscribe to the channel because that's the easiest way to get notified as we go live. For the Q&A, you can write questions for any or all of this episode's artists in the comments section below, and check out the comments as well for a link to the Q&A. See you there.